We begin tonight with the future of Highway 413 in Canada, a new roadway that would cut through part of the Oak Ridges Moraine, an expanse of Ontario's so-called Greenbelt northeast of Toronto. The highway is expected to ease traffic, yet comes at the direct expense of farmland, forest, and the wildlife of the region. Niki Anastasakis of Inside the Story CHCH has the details.
It's easy to get lost in the sights and sounds of nature found in and around Brooklyn, Ontario. The small but rapidly growing town located just north of Whitby is home to Ontario's natural wonder, the Oak Ridges Moraine.
Oak Ridges Moraine is an extremely environmentally sensitive area. It runs 160 kilometers all the way from Caledon over to Rice Lake. This area within Durham has approximately 18,350 wells that depend on the Oak Ridges Moraine for water recharge. And all in all, there's 65 rivers that have their headwaters in the Oak Ridges Moraine.
However, the home to freshwater vegetation and wildlife species within Ontario's greenbelt is now facing an existential threat. If the region of Durham proceeds with its plan to build a roughly $250 million highway through the region to, quote, support the traffic infrastructure needs of the community and accommodate future growth.
The main issues regarding going through the Oak Ridges Moraine laterally would be, first and foremost, it's extremely sensitive from a water perspective. There would be damage to riverbeds, to water recharge, to wells, to wildlife. There are endangered species that we have in our river, for example, red-side dace could lose their final habitats.
If this $250 million project were to be built through the Oak Ridges Moraine, it would be the width of a football field and approximately 7 kilometers long. Climate change right now is a huge crisis, a huge problem we're trying to solve, and this sounds like it would add fuel to the fire.
Absolutely. We're taking away carbon-absorbing forests in the middle of a climate change crisis. That's a disaster.
Brooklyn resident Wendy Evans, who lives on the family farm just south of the Oak Ridges Moraine, is worried this would cause serious and irreparable environmental damage to one of southern Ontario's remaining ecological landscapes and could degrade the environment for future generations. She says she wouldn't change her upbringing for the world and hopes to keep the farming traditions alive for years to come.
It's become very difficult and would be almost impossible to be able to work the land, as the only access and egress is on Lake Ridge Road. And with traffic going at 100 or 120 kilometers per hour, you can't get farm machinery in. So that's a really big issue. One of the other issues would be our well. The well would likely dry up.
Evans, together with another 180 concerned citizens who have become signatories, have hired legal assistance from Aird and Burles law firm to represent them in their battle for climate change, farming, and freshwater.
What is your legal position in this project?
So my legal position is that the preferred alternatives that are being advanced through this EA process do not satisfy the requirements of the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, which is not a set of guidelines or policy documents. It's actual law enshrined in Ontario regulation. And that conservation plan requires two things when you propose infrastructure through the Oak Ridges Moraine. First, it needs to be demonstrated that there's a need for the project. And second, that there has been an examination and that there's no reasonable alternative for placing this infrastructure in the Oak Ridges Moraine.
In fact, as Evans suggests, other reasonable alternative routes exist, which were dismissed from the Environmental Assessment Study Team due to technical considerations. Evans says the environmental damage could be minimized significantly if council looks at Thixon Road, since the highway would only go north-south rather than laterally through the moraine. Plus, local businesses would only be 1 kilometer away, drawing more crowds to downtown Brooklyn. Inside the Story reached out to the town of Whitby for comment on this project. Whitby's Chief Administration Officer Matt Gaskell said in a statement, As a town, we are committed to finding an alternate route for Provincial Highway 712 that not only supports a safe and vibrant downtown, but also protects and minimizes any impact to the environment and existing homes in our community. It's common for projects like this to create anxiety, especially if there is any misinformation floating around. The CA is a very complex process with many moving parts, which involves the consideration of all potential impacts regardless of what route ends up being selected in the future. This project is one of many other controversial highway projects promising to save commuters time. The announcement of the new Highway 413 is aimed at alleviating traffic and would run from Highway 401-407 interchange in Halton to Highway 400 in Vaughan, costing taxpayers anywhere from $6 billion to $10 billion.
It's going to be an environmental disaster.
But the 413 is too facing significant opposition. A Ministry of Transportation expert panel recommending against it in 2017, saying it would only save commuters about 30 seconds a trip. Halton Hills Mayor and Town Council voted to oppose the project.
Estimated $6 to $8 billion would be better used for mass transit.
As Ontario residents continue to demonstrate against Highway 413, it's still just the beginning for the Brooklyn Bypass Highway 712 project. Evans and Nelligan say the town of Whitby still has time to do the right thing to eliminate options that impact the moraine. To voice your opinion, visit connectwhitby.ca.
We're seeking to speak to council and suggest to council that they look at other alternatives now rather than wait until this is complete. Because the further down the road it gets, the harder it is to change tracks.
For Inside the Story, I'm Niki Anastasakis.